like to invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Brian, if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Auger?
Present.
Mr. Epping?
Present.
Mr. Galley?
Here.
Mr. Sharrow?
Here.
And Mr. Zurich?
Here.
Great. We'll go through our agenda tonight, and then we'll get to the new cases. First item on the agenda is the review of the agenda, in fact. It's my understanding that case number 3, the third case, I should say, case number 23-006, is being postponed.
I'll make a motion to pull 23-002 off the agenda and reschedule it for May 24th at 6 o'clock.
006. Is it?
006, I'm sorry.
Correct. So case number 23-006 being taken off tonight's agenda and being put on the May 24th at 6 p.m., which would be a special meeting, obviously open to the public. All right. Any other changes, gentlemen? No? If not, we'll have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Moving, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Before we get into tonight's agenda, this is a point of the meeting in which anybody in the audience or online is able to come and address the board on anything that's not specifically on the agenda. So we've got 3 items on the agenda. If anybody's here tonight that would like to speak on anything other than what's on the agenda, now would be the time to do that. Just come on up to the lectern. Seeing no one in the audience, is there anyone online that would like to address anything not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll keep moving. We'll close the public comment. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move right into new business. We have 3 cases on tonight's agenda. What we'll do is I'll read the case into the minutes, explain what the variances are that are being requested. They've been published online. They've been broadcast throughout the community, and so it's a public meeting really for you to come up and explain your application, explain what the circumstances at your house or your business or your property that is requesting a variance. We'll go through that and just kind of explain to us just in plain language what it is you're seeking to do, why it perhaps is unique to your situation or your piece of property. We'll bring it back to the board. We'll ask questions. Just kind of a back and forth. Our objective here is just to understand what it is specifically that you'd like to accomplish and why it doesn't fit within our ordinance. We'll then open it up for public comment. Anybody in the audience or online, anybody that's written in, we'll read those into the record. And then, again, we'll just continue the question and answer. Our goal ultimately is to make some type of a decision, either to approve, to deny, or to potentially table or postpone. I would ask that anybody that comes up to speak, whether it's the applicant or anybody from the public, if you'll come up to the lectern, give us your name and your address so that we can add those into the minutes. Anybody who speaks tonight, if you haven't done so already, on your way out, if you could sign up on the sheet at the doorway there. That way when we put the minutes together, we know that we've got the spelling of your name right and the address and so forth. So with that, I will call the first case, which is case number 23-004, Philip White, petitioner, requesting 2 variances. The first is a variance from section 5.06A4 in our ordinance in order to construct an accessory structure in front of his home. The second variance request is a 611 square foot variance from section 5.06A3. Both in order, again, to construct, both variances are related to and in order to construct an accessory structure at 4765 Crestview Drive, which is the R1A residential district of our township. Oh, Mr. White, are you representative? Are you here tonight?
He's actually
Online. Perfect.
He's online. I'm his wife, so.
Nice to meet you,
You
Mrs.
go.
White. Well, who wants to start? We'll,
Phil, do you want to start?
Phil, if you're it looks like you're coming off. There you are.
Yeah, I am. I
Give us-
I got a kind of a crappy connection, but
Mr. White, give us just a minute to try and adjust our audio so we can see if we can get you any louder.
okay. And
Are you able to
How's
hear
that
us
looking on
pretty
your
well?
end? I can.
Okay, great. Okay, why don't, we're gonna keep adjusting, but we can hear you better already, so if you wanna,
Okay, I'd just like to point,
go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that the first variance, regarding the in front of the property, obviously it's not in front of my house, because the front is actually on Crestview Drive. This is a new ordinance that's been put into place since I have, I currently have the shed there that's depicted on my plot, that I just wanted to point that out, I guess, would be the most important thing. And the other thing is the reason why I'm choosing this location. One, I've already have a permitted accessory building there, 12 by 16. And talking to the neighbors, they would rather have me see it on that side of my house rather than put it in between my neighbor on Crestview and the one and my neighbors behind me, which are on Eston. So I just wanted to point out those couple things. It may be obvious looking at the plot map, but I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so, so that we're clear, you've got kind of an unusual lot in the sense that it's almost a horizontal, a wider than deeper lot, and your home sits in about the middle of it. So, Brian, in terms of the two requests, we've got really, because it's a corner lot, we've got two front yards, and so is in fact the second variance, or I guess it's the first request in front of the accessory structure. It is in front of the home as it relates to Eston Road, correct? Okay. So Mr. White, from that point of view, it would be appropriate to have both requested variances considered because you are a corner lot. You've got both Crestview and Eston Road, South Eston Road, so you'll, almost by definition, if it's to the right side of your house, it will be in the front yard of Eston or in front of your home. All right, that makes sense?
Yep, I was just merely pointing out that the previous administration, without variance, let me permit the structure that's there. That was all I was trying to say.
Ah, I got it,
Well,
okay.
that was in conformance.
The point of it being in the front of the house never came up when I built that shed the first time.
Okay. So in terms of the other structures in the in the yard right now, what's
Well, I believe it was, yeah.
what's ultimately gonna stay and what's gonna go away or be replaced by
Sorry, I
the
didn't hear
new
the
building?
question.
There's already one.
Okay.
Oh,
Mrs. White, is there anything else you'd
I'm
like?
basically replacing the 12 by,
it's over here.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm basically replacing the 12 by 16 structure with a 32 by 32
And moving this over here.
accessory building.
Okay, great, thank
So
you.
I'm going from 12 by
The one that's
16,
here over there.
that's kind of,
Okay, great, thank you. Mrs. White, is there anything else you'd like to add there?
I just wanted to add that we're.
If you come up just so you're on the microphone.
Jim, in case you didn't get a chance to get out there.
Thank you.
Jana White, 4765 Crestview Drive. We also have the plan to convert our garage into living space. Obviously, our garage is full of items. I can't even park in there. We love it. We love our home and would just like to be able to expand it a little bit. So we do need some more storage. So basically, that's the big reason why we're doing it.
Sounds great. Yeah, we read you included a letter describing the property, which is helpful for us to see. So
Okay,
thank
great.
you. With that, I'll bring it up to the board if there's any. Go ahead, Brian.
On your square foot calculation, you count the attached garage for the total square foot, correct, or no?
I calculated the total floor area plus the existing shed, and so they have 1216, they're allowed 605. So that's where you get the 611, I think it is, as the square footage. So I did calculate the garage is part of garage space. So yeah, I mean, I tried to apply it to the our spreadsheet, but because it really doesn't have a factor.
I guess my question, if that's changed to living space at the same time and they do it all at the same time, does it change the calculation?
No,
It
no,
doesn't.
everything, they're basically maxed out. This garage would max them out in square footage
And
and more.
And I couldn't quite hear everything he said on the internet connection, but the intent is to do the new structure and keep the existing one, but move it on the property, correct?
Yeah, he's gonna move the shed to the other side of the house.
Yeah, and I see it on the plot, I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah.
It's not being torn down,
No,
it's just being
no, and that's
relocated.
added to our calculation, so that's where I came up with.
That's part of the
that.
611 or what that is?
The
Well,
overage.
that's, yeah, it's a part of the square footage that they're allowed, that they have, so.
Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you. Ken, any other questions or thoughts?
Just a couple, I guess. The intent would be to enter the garage from Easton then? A new driveway?
That's negative. It would be, no, it would be Crestview
It'd
would be
still
the
be-
entrance. Same as the front of the house.
Okay. And then the material, the siding, looks like it's some sort of a sheet metal or aluminum?
Yes,
the
sir.
plan?
It would be the same, yep, the same barn red that is the current structure is painted, and in the same taste in the barn style.
Have you spent any time thinking about making the structure a little bit smaller to get a little closer to the specification of square foot?
I have probably one of the smallest campers that you can buy, and that's the intent, is to store it inside that I'm currently paying rent off-site to store the camper. So I'm hoping to stay at this size so I can put the camper inside. And that is the absolute smallest I could make it. I've been back and forth on it, trust me.
I think I'm all set.
All right, thank you, Ken. Jim, any thoughts or questions?
What's the square footage of the existing barn that's, or listing shed that's going to be moved?
It's 12 by 16.
192.
I mean, I understand now that he wants to keep a camper inside the new 32 by 32 foot facility, but that's an awfully big garage. And it would seem to me that, you know, in the essence of fairness, there would be plenty of room behind, you know, the other space. I mean, 32 foot wide, in addition to the depth, will leave a lot of extra space in that garage. So I guess I have issues with, you know, kind of double dipping, keeping the existing, but yet adding a 32 foot by 32 foot way oversized two-car garage.
And we have we have 3 vehicles. We have snowmobiles, we have the riding mower, 4-wheeler, and several other things that are in my garage right now. And our small structure is full, so, and we have a workbench and obviously, and that
Yeah,
type
And that's
of,
all inside a 22 by 22 foot garage.
some of it is in our garage, our main garage, and some of it is in the structure.
No, in the existing.
Yeah, I mean, it's maxed
In
out.
essence, I don't have a problem. I mean, unfortunately, in some of these old subdivisions, there were some strange lots, like 100 foot deep, which is, you know, your house is non-conforming. But that was just one of the questions that I had.
Okay,
Thank you.
and I'd rather have them in a structure than
Well, I
on my front lawn.
No, I mean, you've done the best you can in
Yeah.
far as where you're gonna put another garage, if you wanna turn that into house space.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I'll point out, Mr. Charlie, that you bring up a good point, is part of what our board strives to do is if a variance perhaps is being considered, is it the smallest possible variance deviation from the ordinance? And so your thought process there was, rather than 611 feet, which would be the variance request, is there something less than that if that
Correct.
smaller shed goes away?
Correct.
Something to consider. Alan?
Just piggybacking on what Jim just said, this is part of Sunny Beach subdivision, which is on North and South Eston Roads up in Thundera Park. We've got a lot of these old subdivisions that are 30-foot lots. Some of them were designed just to have tents on them, and this is an accumulation of the lots. I'm quite familiar with Thundera Park and Sunny Beach for building up there. I can see where on this particular lot, they've got practical difficulties and they also have hardships. If something was to fail on the septic system, we don't have any information other than the drawing that shows there's a septic field there, but with the placement of the well where it is, I would say that the septic field is on that side of on the west side of the house. I think it's well off of South Eston Road, the structure. I go along with Jim's thought on the small structure maybe disappearing, but I'm one for keeping things covered and out of sight. I'd rather have things put in a building or covered than they would be put out in the open. And if we haven't heard, have we heard anything from any of the neighbors or anything? I would like to see it being in that location, possibly not with the red barn siding, but more in line with the vinyl siding that's on the house, to keep it more architecturally appealing, but it is more of a country setting out here on Clarkston and Eston Road, so I'm not totally against it.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you. Thank you. At this point, I'll open it up for any public comment. Anybody in the room would like to speak on this case? Anybody online like to speak on this case? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for additional questions. I do note that the location of the proposed building does meet the front yard, 40-foot off of Aston, does meet the rear yard, 10-foot setback. So it really is kind of that notion of bringing it in front of the structure or front of the permanent home, which it really, Alan, you bring out, it really doesn't have much choice if the septic is on one side because the lot is so narrow. It really is the only location. So that's at least the thought process, I suppose, for the application for that variance. And then the other one is the calculation of it being 611 feet larger than the total calculation between the existing garage, the existing shed that's going to remain, and then the new proposed barn is 611 feet larger. Gentlemen, any further discussion? Any thoughts, additional question or motion?
Well, just talking out loud, you know, right now the RV is stored off-site. So is it a hardship that it has to stay off-site, I guess? You know, to me, the structure's pretty big. I'm not sure if there's, in this subdivision, I don't think I witnessed another structure that big. So I think it'll be an exception for size in that area. That's my first thought.
It's a fair point. It's, from a hardship point of view, and part of ZBA is to consider, is it a hardship, and is it a hardship that we didn't create ourselves? You know, myself as a homeowner, we hear it an awful lot, but having a lot of stuff is not a hardship, but it's a real consideration, and so we get that. Hardships in this case is something like a practical difficulty, perhaps, is the narrowness of the lot. But you bring up, Mr. Zarek, good point, is it's beyond pushing the envelope of its size, and are there other conditions, making the building smaller, eliminating the other accessory structure that could make it less of a variance request, which again is something we seek to do. So I don't know if you have additional thoughts on that, or if anybody agrees. We've mentioned it a few times. If people feel strongly about that, we can certainly consider that in the motion. Any other thoughts or comments?
The shed that he's moving, or wants to move, is 192 square feet. If we allowed, just follow my thinking here for a minute, if we didn't allow that shed to stay, to be moved, and allowed the barn to be built, he could still build a 10 by 20 on the lot for a garden type shed or something, am I not correct? Without a permit, just as long as he had a land use permit.
Land use permit, but we'd still go through the calculations
Would
for
you?
total accessory, yeah. I mean, we do allow supplemental accessory buildings, so I mean, we could probably have it qualify as something like that, which is something small that we do allow that's separate from accessory buildings, so,
Garden shed type thing.
yeah.
If you do take that shed out of the equation, Alan, it brings the total variance of the square footage down to around 420.
Right, right.
I'm just questioning the total square footage allowance. And yes, you have the hardship of a narrow lot. You know, the stuff thing, a lot of people go through that. I go through that as well. It's crammed in there, but again, it's not an overall hardship of the property.
Brian, can you walk me through again, or at least just kind of explain the high-level details of, our calculation requires that we take into account the existing garage and the existing shed, I'll call it. But the Whites have explained that they're gonna convert, and I understand that as of today, that's a garage, and so we count that, but that's gonna be converted as part of this application into a living space and therefore eliminated. So that 22 by 22 or so goes away. Is that already part of your calculation, or?
Yeah, so
Okay.
our calculation of square footage for accessory is taken on parcel size. So when you run the numbers through that, they have 0.7 acres right now. So if you run our equation through that, let me get back to my desktop. So if they have 0.7 acres, they're allowed total accessory of 605. So when you take the garage and you also take the existing shed, they're basically maxed out with a 950, but you have to back out some numbers. So it's a really confusing way to do it, but bottom line is we triple checked the math, and that's what we came up with, so.
And that makes sense to me, and I guess what I'm hearing is it doesn't matter that there's a garage now that's gonna no longer be a garage. It's really related to the overall size of the property.
Correct.
Thank you.
When the chart says 15,000 square feet to 1.05 acres, you actually look at that and you go down to, like you said, 72 hundredths of an acre. So you don't use the chart the way it is?
No, we have an Excel spreadsheet that is the chart, that calculates it all for us.
So it further defines the difference between 15,000 square feet and an acre and a half. So if you had 20,000 square feet, you would be a certain percent, certain size, or 25, you'd be a little bit more, and
Yeah.
not up.
Yeah, the chart
Hmm.
that we have basically goes lots that are 15,000 or less, 15,000 to an acre.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
And
so-
it would seem to me that they would fall in that category.
Mhm.
But no, it's a percentage based on
Yeah.
how many square feet that you actually have. Okay.
Well, gentlemen, we've gone through the case. We've got a request for two variances. The first is the setback in the accessory structure in the front yard. The second is the request for 611 additional square feet for an accessory structure, so that a 32 by 32 foot garage or barn can be constructed, as well as the relocation of an existing accessory structure, which is part of that 611 square feet. The applicant has given us plans. We've opened it up to the public. We haven't had comment. Do we have any other questions or a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Let me just clarify the accessory size again, because they're allowed 605 square feet on the property. They're gonna eliminate the garage. So that being the case, we can't take, additional square footage and apply it to give them more square footage that they're allowed, because they're allowed 605, but they can go up to a max of 950. That's by using additional garage space and applying it to the square footage. But because they're gonna convert the garage, that's where you have to add up the square footage of the existing shed that's out there, plus the 32 by 32, and you come up with total accessory that they'll have on the property of 1216, and they're allowed 605. So that's where how the math works out, if that makes a little better sense.
So it is factored after the garage is removed or made into house space.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could have applied their current garage and what they haven't, if they haven't, whether it's half the total floor area or.
Then that would be even smaller. I mean, it would be a bigger variance.
Correct.
It would have been a bigger variance had you used the existing garage as an
Um,
existing space.
It probably would have been smaller, actually, because they would have gotten more square footage to use as accessory.
Oh,
So it would have gone down, but bottom line is their intent is to convert the garage. And what we don't want to happen is when they come in, maybe they don't do it right away, and they come in later, maybe next year, or after this is all built, and now they can't do what they wanna do. So,
So it's already been considered.
yeah.
In case 23-004, I'll make a motion to approve it as advertised. I think part of the practical difficulty is they didn't build the house. The house could have been put further to the east, which would have gave more property on the west side of the property for additional structures. These are older lots. If this was a new plat, it would be totally different. Part of the practical difficulty is the septic system is to the west. So this is about the only place where they could put it, and I'm in favor of keeping things undercover.
We have a motion. Do we have support?
support.
We have a motion and support. Brian, if we could have roll call, please?
Mr. Auger?
Yes.
Mr. Epping?
Yes.
Mr. Galley?
No.
Mr. Charles?
Yes.
Mr. Zurich?
No.
Motion carries.
3-2, motion carries. Thank you. Mrs. White, Mr. White, if you'll just continue to work with Brian in the building department, we'll need permits, then we do look for verification that it's built, doesn't go further to the street or to the back, that it is permitted to.
Wonderful.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to our second case, case number 23-005, Glenn Giannini, petitioner requesting again 2 total variances. The first, a 35-foot lot width variance from section 4.09D. The second, a 35-foot side yard setback variance from section 5.06A, both in order to construct an accessory structure at 9200 Ortonville Road, which is an R1R rural residential zoning district. Mr. Giannini, are you available, please? Thank you. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Close, huh? Thank you. Again, you can introduce yourself, give us your address. And then just-
Yes, Glenn Giannini, 9200 Ortonville Road, Clarkston, Michigan.
Thank you.
Amy Giannini.
Nice to meet you. If you could just kind of walk us through your project, your proposed project. We've got a plan up on the screen, and you're seeking to construct a new accessory structure, I think essentially a pole barn?
Yes, I am. We're on a slab, so we have no basement, we have zero storage, a small garage, we can't get our vehicles in the garage. So I also have a couple storage lockers of stuff, cause I don't like everything all over the yard and that, try to keep everything clean, so, based upon where our septic system is, we had constructed a hockey rink there a couple years ago. One of the biggest reasons is, I mean, to get anywhere else, I'm gonna have to take down that, there's a row of trees there as well, and between it and the side lot, and then as well behind it in the middle of it. And the driveway would come straight off my driveway, straight back to the building.
Okay. So you've got a real long piece of property, but it's obviously, it would be primarily a garage or storage, so you're bringing it up close to the house.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
And there's power lines, as you can see, that run through there as well, so I have to be back a certain distance there, and then I have it located where the septic is. It protrudes beyond the, power lines into, there's a, large walnut tree, there's actually two of them there. That's why we kinda decided, you know, if that would be the best spot.
Okay, thank you. And tell us a little bit about the building. You've provided plans, it looks like, is it a frame building, or is it a?
Yes, it's gonna be 2x6 frame building. It's gonna have metal siding on it and shingle roofs on it. And we're gonna try to keep the colors, something that's, you know, the house is white. So we were thinking like in a dark green or something like that, that kinda blends in and doesn't stand out too much, you know, so it kinda goes away, not necessarily just a sore thumb looking at it.
Okay, great. With that, I'll bring, anything else we should know at this point? Good, thanks. Where do we start, Brian? Ken, you wanna?
Are any letters from neighbors or anything?
I had not received a letter. I did receive a call from the next door neighbor, and I believe he's in the audience, so you might be able to.
Okay, I would like to hear that, and then, I guess I don't really have any questions. No, go ahead.
And we'll stay with this side of the room. Alan?
No, like you said, this is a long, narrow piece of property again. I really don't have, I like that he's gonna keep it architecturally blending in with the house. I don't, right now, I don't see any problem.
So it really, the variances do relate, don't they, to really the narrowness of the lot, the side yard setback. If it was a wider lot, it's dissimilar from the last case in the sense that it's not butting up against the size requirement, but it's really a positioning requirement and distance from the side yard based on in part at least, based on the size of the width of the lot. Jim, any other thoughts?
Looking at the plot plan with Gary Stonerock's seal on it, you show the rink, you show the trees, you show the septic field, and you show the location of the proposed structure, and I'm assuming that everything is pretty much to scale.
Well, it's relatively close to
Yeah,
scale. That was,
it looks close to scale, but just looking at it, I guess I'm questioning why you determined that you wanted a 35-foot setback, because that building could be moved another 15, 20 feet to the north and not conflict with the rink, the septic field, the power lines, or the trees.
well, to go there, it's actually coming within probably maybe 10 to 12 feet of the corner of the septic. I mean,
Then that's not to scale then.
no, it's not. This was a original, mortgage survey I had, as you can see.
Well, yeah, and they don't show, on the mortgage survey, they don't show septic fields, so that obviously it's been
Right.
added to the drawing. That's why I asked if this was relatively to scale.
It is somewhat, I took the scale off of what the house was, but it didn't work out with, obviously, when it was reprinted at one time, you know, from the original. It didn't work out with the scale as far as that, so I tried to be as accurate as I could with it, but the septic is probably from where the structure sits right now, I'm guessing about 25 feet to that south corner of it there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's two large walnut trees there as well.
Walnut trees are closer to the property line.
They're in between the septic and the proposed structure.
Oh, I see, in the middle of the yard. Oh, I see 'em. Looks like the southern boundary of your property, we've got the pine trees up by the rink, and then the southern boundary between you and your neighbor seems to be pretty well vegetated.
Yeah, well as those, the line of the pine trees that are real obvious right there. I mean, there's several pines between it and the property line that would also have to be removed, as well as behind it to go anyplace else with it. I mean, I really can't go more in towards the middle of it, but where it's set up and the grade as well, there's like almost a 2-foot grade difference in that 60 feet from front to back of it. So the more I get out in the middle, unfortunately, I'm getting to 2.5, 3 foot from back corner to front. So I mean, it'd be a lot of fill and restructuring and everything, but let alone the septic's there. So, you know, it would kind of protrude over there to try to chase anything out.
Is that a small orchard?
There is several apple trees, yes. And my septic tank is on the left side of the house. And there's a fire pit that is there, which you see the white, then there's a small orchard, if you call it, right there, and garden behind it. So coming around that side, you know, there's a big septic tank that's sitting there, and you can kind of see the discoloration of the grass in that picture where that septic field's heading over there too.
Well, the way you've got this sketch, and the way that orchard is, the septic field's in that orchard.
No, it's
No.
before it.
It's like behind the deck. It comes up alongside the house behind the deck.
Closer.
Maybe by the sketch, but you can't see it quite as well on this, but you can see it on that side a
Yeah.
little
Right,
better. You can
right
see
there.
these lines here
Yeah,
that are
there's the
probably the
field.
septic.
Yeah, but if you look at this drawing,
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, it's pushed closer to the barn, in
Yeah.
all reality, probably.
okay. If it's,
Like I said, that's not to scale. I mean, I kind of went off what the house was based on it to try to give a little bit of correlation in the size to it as well.
just for the record, don't the application forms require a scaled site plan?
Not necessarily for the zoning board of appeals. Planning commission, yes, but zoning board of appeals, this is pretty typical that we would
Oh, I
take
understand that. I
something
understand
that's
that, but
to the,
it's just a tad misleading.
yeah, they sign, by signing the application, they sign the affidavit that all the information is accurate.
Mhm.
But, you know, again, we're dealing with homeowners.
Like I say, I really don't have any objection, but I just question that if it's another 5 or 10 feet further to the north would make my life easier, but other than that, it's okay.
It's difficult dealing with homeowners and, you know, trying to do the best they can.
Present company excluded, obviously.
Throughout that area right there, there's several pole barns that are closer to the property lines.
Oh, I'm
And-
certain.
And they're all the same sized properties within, you know, a
Mhm.
small amount
feet.
as far as the acreage on that, but most of the widths are within 2 to 3 feet of the same width, all the way down through there, so.
Yeah, if you go 2 and 3 lots to the south, those either are variances or not, you know, grandfathered structures. It also looks like a few people are taking liberties with other non-conforming uses of property to the
Well, there's-
south with cars and such.
There's 2 lots to the north, and then there's 7 lots to the south and 9 lots to the south that are within probably 10 to 12 feet, I'm guessing, from the structure and the property line.
Yeah, and just looking at the overheads we have, there's structures almost on 80% of the properties that are within the variance.
Brian, any other observations or questions or thoughts?
Audience?
None from you? I'm sorry.
What's that?
I wasn't, I didn't.
Oh, did you say
Yeah,
me?
Yeah, anything
Oh, I
else?
thought you were talking to him.
No.
2 Brians.
Never
That's all the
enough.
thoughts I had.
Never enough. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this case? Sir? Yeah, if you guys would just mind sitting down, we'll have the audience come up. Again, if you could give your name and address, and then if you haven't done so already, if you'd sign in. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name's Tim Tarverstead. I am Glenn's neighbor.
Okay.
I've lived there for 9180 Orneville Road. I have lived there for 33 years. I've lived in Clarkston my whole life. I moved to Clarkston because of the open and country atmosphere and not to have my neighbors right on top of me. The location of this pole barn would be 15 feet from the border overlooking my backyard. I think it will greatly reduce have a reduction on my property value. He has many options of where he can build this pole barn on his 5 buildable acres. There's no hardship here. In closing, like I said, there's no hardship or any valid reason not to follow the township zoning ordinances. They have been written for exactly this reason and should be followed. He has many options to build a huge pole barn on his 5 buildable acres of land in the guidelines of the zoning ordinance. Can you imagine having a huge pole barn 15 feet from your backyard looking straight down into my backyard?
I appreciate that, sir. Are you said you're his direct neighbor? You
Yes,
obviously.
the side that he's gonna build closest to the.
So you're the southern side closer to where the
Yes, and
barn
then
is.
we do have a border dispute, so I'm hoping that if he does build, that we can make sure that there's a survey done to make sure that it's to the real border.
Right,
Because
well,
my neighbor was a Stone Rocks. I lived there 10 years before he did, and my neighbor was a Stone Rocks. He's a surveyor, and we did a survey, and he showed me where the border lines were, and now we have a 3-foot dispute.
okay.
Yeah,
I just wanna throw that up, I wanna make sure it is,
well, that's where his rink is.
You've got a detached, looks like detached garage and
that
some
was there when I got there.
outdoor
I do-
storage.
I do have some cleanup, I do admit, sir.
You do have some cleanup, yeah. Okay, just and we've got the utility lines through there. This would be,
And the ice skating
Yes,
rink
yes.
was built at the end of this, like in February this year. I was curious why it was built so late in the winter. Now I kinda know why. So,
okay.
Just for,
Go ahead, Alan.
just for the public's knowledge, anytime we give a side yard, rear yard, or any variance on distance, the building department requires a survey to locate the footings to make sure they're within what our variance was allowed.
Not only where the boundary line is, but to make sure that it doesn't encroach further than what may be
Correct.
permitted, okay. You did mention that you are doing some cleanup. Have you begun that, or are you working with your neighbors in the town on that? As long as you brought that up, I'm looking at the.
no, I need to.
Yeah.
I had 2 back surgeries, so I've been out for a little bit, and I'm feeling better now, so I should be able to start tackling it.
Terrific, yeah, because I think
Son of a bitch
it will-
is, I don't-
as it relates to the ordinance and just our standards, that it looks like you're aware of it, so I appreciate
sir.
that. Thank you. All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else in the audience that has like to comment on this? Anybody online who would like to comment on our second case? I'll bring it back up to the board. So we've got a request, 2 requests, one for a 35-foot side yard variance. The ordinance does require an R1R, a 50-foot side yard. This would seek a 35-foot relief from that. And then the second variance is again, a 35-foot setback. Well, Brian, let me clarify that. The first is 35-foot lot width. Is that really just to bring the lot into
It
conformance?
is, yeah,
Okay.
it brings
So-
it whole in case they go to sell it,
So
and there's
that-
no nonconformity.
So that's a great point. So there's 2 variance requests, and we see this an awful lot with some lots. When a lot of lots in our community were originally built, they might not meet today's ordinance. They more than likely met the ordinance at that time, or an awful lot of lots in our community were built before there was an ordinance. So when there's a lot that comes before the ZBA, that really has nothing to do with the application, in this case, nothing to do with the board that's being proposed. We just look to clean up the record, and so this lot, we do have a lot width variance ratio as it relates to lots. This is a long skinny lot, so it violates that, just like every other lot up and down that street does. And so that first variance is really not a request from the applicant, but it's a, hey, as long as you're here, let's clean up our books. The second one is specific to the proposed barn, and that's that side yard where typically the ordinance would consider 50-foot. This is a 35-foot request or relief for that, to bring the building closer to the side. Part of that, perhaps, the applicant has indicated, just like with an awful lot of these lots that are more, they don't meet that length to width ratio. If these were newer homes, it would be more of a rectangular lot and presumably then wider, and therefore probably not have this, the need kind of up and down the street to put buildings a little closer to a side yard than would typically be considered. So, long explanation, but I thought that was worth explaining for the audience. Jim?
I'm not gonna make a motion, but I'm gonna make a suggestion that possibly could end up in a motion. With the ambiguities involved with this site plan, the way it's been submitted, I can't vote in favor of this until I know the exact location of where that septic field is. Because I feel that there's 15 or 20 feet that could possibly shift this building to the north. Secondly, with the amount of size that this parcel actually has, including the area behind where this ice rink is, I really don't see a variance because he can put it a whole bunch of different places.
Okay. So, again, kind of going back to the earlier theme, if a variance is considered, could it be, is it the least possible? And your suggestion is that if we knew specifically where the septic field is, it could move over 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 foot further north, further away from the boundary of the...
That's exactly correct.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions, gentlemen? Mr. Genie, Mr. Charles is suggesting, and we'll still ultimately take a motion one way or the other, but is suggesting that if we knew where that septic field was, at least those outside corners, that there's the ability to move that away and to lessen the request. It doesn't seem in this location as though you'd ever get a 50-foot from the property line, but it could be 20 or 25 or 30 foot.
Right. We would just be taking out the walnut trees to go over. And in regards to what Jim said about going behind the row of pines or anything, we want to build just a nice little driveway off of our circle driveway heading straight back. I don't really want a driveway all through my yard, you know, and we don't drive through the grass.
Yeah.
So I just wanted it to look nice and tight and clean, coming right off my circle driveway without a driveway going, you know, half of the property.
Yeah. And then I appreciate that it's not truly a hardship, but I understand your point there. And you could still achieve that, let's imagine that it moves 10 or 15 or 20 feet further to the north. Yes, you may lose those couple nice trees, but you could still have that driveway potentially. It does, in its position, and I think it's just a reality that I would notice, is it does block, your neighbor does have some outdoor storage there. He's mentioned that he's gonna clean it up, but it does, to a certain extent, in that location, does shield that. I suppose a fence would too.
Exactly.
Well, there's initially 9 buildings that it would cover up looking at. And that's not why we want it there. It's the most feasible spot. Like I said, with the grade difference of where it is, it would have to be graded over into the septic field across the yard because the difference from the front to the back and the 60 feet. The reason why we chose that area for the hockey rink is it was the least amount of grading that needed to be done to do it. It's shadowed from all them trees, so it does keep ice. The reason why we didn't construct it this year is we didn't have the weather or assume it. We thought we were going to do it, but because of the expense of the water, the liners and everything else for it this year, the weather wasn't great, but the structure was up. We took it down in the summer. my intent with it is to rim it all around it with boulders, and I have turf to go in it for the summertime for a putting area and such like that. Now, to try to take it behind it, I'm gonna have to lose that row of pines, plus there's a lot, probably 8 or 9 red pines that are between it and the property line, plus 2 big pine trees that are gonna have to come out in order to make a curve out into the yard. And there's 3 fairly mature maple trees back there that would have to be moved as well. So if I'm gonna try to bring it over, my biggest concern is to work that grade out, getting close to that septic. Now, I'm willing to get a survey to depict this line, you know, exactly where it is. That's not a problem, but trying to move it over, I may be able to get 5 feet, will be 20 off of it, but I'm gonna be getting 15 feet away, 20 maximum away from the corner of that septic. And my biggest issue is with trying to work that grade out there, you know, to even move it over to that situation. This seemed like the most reasonable spot for it to be. And like I said, these other structures that have been down the roads here, there was plenty of room for them not to put them where they're at. You know, I'm trying to do it as tasteful as I can and be with it. I'm trying to do the colors that will blend in. I was even considering doing a gambrel style roof. My neighbor has a 30 by 50 barn, you can see there. It's a gambrel style, it's bright red. 2 doors away from me, there's one that's dug into the hill that towers above the trees looking from my house in that direction. So I'm trying to keep it as tasteful as not. I mean, I have pictures of sitting on my deck, looking out the back of it. You can see somewhat where the septic is. I mean, I'd be happy to locate that information if need be, but like I said, the biggest issue is where the power lines are, keeping the grade to where I'm not grading across the property into the apple trees to get it. Otherwise, I would have put the rink there.
Sure.
That was my intent of
Quick
it.
question.
Okay, thank
It's the
you.
least amount of damage I can do to get it in there, and then I also have to get a new well, which has to be positioned X amount away from the septic, somewhere over in that direction as well.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Just along with what the petitioner was just saying, I thought I heard him kind of say he was pretty confident he might be able to get 5 feet of it. That would lessen the impact by the neighbor for 5 feet. Would you be opposed to, you know, putting a couple pine trees on that corner of it?
No, in all means, I'm
If we
gonna
put it in
dress
motion?
it up around there from every direction, so it's, you know, tucked away and not sticking out. The structure's not gonna be that high and not that large, I feel, compared to some of the other ones in the area, you know, north and south to me, so I was trying to keep it as inconspicuous with the colors and the size of it is. I mean, I'd love to have it bigger, but that's just figuring out everything I've got to store in there. I like to keep everything inside, you know, so it's not a mess everywhere. So, I mean, all the neighbors to the north, you can see all their yards, you know,
Yeah.
everything's cleaned up and all
I
of
got
them,
you.
so
Thanks.
that was my
To
intent.
keep going with what you're saying, are you saying maybe we would approve,
30?
Yeah, with 30, and
a
then
few
obviously they
screening
have
trees.
to document that it's correctly located?
Correct.
Or do we just ask them to wait a month and then bring us the best he can do properly documented?
I mean, I'm comfortable with doing 30 with some screening
But don't
on
forget,
the corner of it.
with those big trees he's got in the center of his lot, he's gotta keep the footings and stuff out, away from the canopy, or he's in risk
Yeah.
of losing
Yeah.
those big
Oh, yeah.
trees. And
Yeah, I
that
don't-
pushes it further to the,
Yeah, I don't want to
So-
push him too much, but he he did say that he confidently thought he could probably get maybe
5
5
feet.
feet with a few caveats in there. So
As it sits
that
right
was my
now,
logic.
I mean, I don't know if anybody had looked at it, but it's all measured out on the ground, painted, and, you know, right to the T of where it is. If that structure was to move, let's just say 5 feet, the eave of the building will be under the canopy of the walnut tree. It's probably only maybe 15 feet to the walnut tree to begin with.
To the
And then,
trunk.
and then there's another one right
To the
behind it in front of where the rink area is, you know? So I was, that and the grade issue, the more I go that way, the more grade drops, the more of it's gonna be sticking out of the ground in the front of it, that I'm gonna have to address bringing, you know, something in, you know, even to the driveway to get into it.
Right.
So,
One more question.
Go ahead, Alan.
When I was out there today, I took pictures of it. The snowplow stakes, let's say,
yeah,
is
that's,
that your location of your?
yes, yes it is.
Okay.
That, what was marked out there is, you know, 35 wide by 60 feet deep, and I wrote it all on the ground.
Because I didn't walk back there, drive back there. I turned around your circle and took some pictures there and the other side of the lot.
There's actually, there's paint on the ground depicting the two back corners of where the septic is as well, that I located out there for you. And that's based upon where I can see them lines where they go and stop and where the rear header comes in across it.
Right.
So if I get the grade too far out on it, it's gonna, you know, if I ever have to service that or what have you, I'm gonna be dealing with that issue as well.
I'll say from a horticulture point of view, trees can be damaged really more than, you know, in terms of the canopy. It's less about the canopy, it's more about putting too much soil up against the base of the tree and, you know, burying the tree essentially. And so it sounds like by the further we would suggest moving it north, the more grading, the more that corner of the barn is gonna come out, and so you're gonna grade, and so it's gonna less be a concern about the canopy, but more a concern about putting, you know, potentially
Roots
putting
too far down.
roots too
Buried.
far down and starting to bury, you know, potentially bury the trunk, which ultimately would kill the tree more quickly than interrupting the canopy.
I did shoot the grade from front to back. It's about 21 inches in the 60 feet that it is. But that's flat on the ground. Of course, you know, I'm not gonna put it flat on the ground. It's gonna need to be up, you know, 6 inches or so in that back corner, which gets me to, as the property goes towards the north, it drops more this way, not just this way.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let me bring it back to the board here. You know, we're not a design committee, but I
Right.
think we have great experience really all the way across, and enough experience on the board itself to have questions, and in the kind of the spirit of understanding the variance, understanding can we lessen it, can we lessen impact on neighbors and on the community. I think these are all really valid questions. So we've got some different options. Jim suggested that perhaps we need more information. Brian has suggested that he may have enough information and there may be some you know, consideration. The applicants have done some homework and have provided good information. Is anybody at a point where they have more questions, they have more thoughts, we want to make a motion to postpone, a motion to approve or deny?
The only thing that I can say is that there may well be a hardship here based on a lot of things that we don't know. And if we knew where the septic field was, if we knew some grades, if we knew where these walnut trees were, there may well be enough hardship to justify the location of where this building is right now.
Pinch it right where it needs to be.
But from my standpoint, I don't see it.
You just
I don't
think
see the
it-
information.
Okay. It's a fair point. So a survey would
Yes.
give you that information.
Not only location, but topo. At least of that
Of an
band in
area.
the middle of this. And then it may well prove that what he is proposing is the way it should work. But I don't know that.
You don't know.
And
There's-
I can't vote in favor of this the way it is.
So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Gianni, and we haven't heard from everybody, Mr. and Mrs. But you have, as the applicant, the ability to request a postponement as well. We could certainly ultimately motion it, and we can see where the rest of the board's thoughts are. But at any point, you can say, hey, that makes sense to me, we can provide that information, and Brian could help you with, you know, there's plenty of good surveyors in the community that would help more specifically locate that. I think what Mr. Charles is saying is, when you push the push we know where the septic is, we know where those trees specifically are, we know what the grade is. There is a sweet spot in which it's kind of where it needs to be for all those things. At least for Mr. Charlie, he's saying he doesn't have that information yet, so there is that opportunity.
And you are gonna have to get a survey in the end anyway, when you do the.
Yeah, I
footings.
realize that. It's a month and a half out right now for where they were, and then the price of it, because of the foliage being on the trees and the size of the parcel, they won't do one side. It has to be all four sides. It has to be done on it, so.
I'm sorry, I'm not following what you're saying there.
I've checked into a survey. It's a
Okay.
month and a half out to get one, and.
Okay, it's a waiting list right now?
Yes,
You're on a wait?
and what it is now is not the same price close to what it's gonna be in a month and a half, because the foliage will be on the trees, and because
They
the
can't
lot's
shoot
like
it?
1,300 feet deep, yeah, so, I am aware of that, I have checked into those, ultimately, I would like to get that survey, that way there's no dispute where it's at.
Does sound like there's that southern line has to be identified accurately, but for what Jim, the area that you're talking about wouldn't necessarily require at that stage a full survey. You still gotta get a crew out there, but wouldn't have to necessarily shoot the whole 1,300 boundary. Can you do a partial survey like that just for this area, or?
Well, you're gonna have to
Charlie doesn't
establish
have
the
business.
south property line to put the building 15 feet off.
Front to back.
And from what the
Right.
neighbor says, there's some sort of a possible
Yes.
question as to where the line actually is.
Yeah, because like I said, the stone rocks were my neighbors before, and they were professional surveyors. And
Oh,
they
yeah.
told me exactly where the property line was when I moved in,
Mhm.
before they did. And there's a 3-foot difference right now, that we are. So right now, his big pole barn's gonna be 12 feet from where I think the property line is, right overlooking my backyard. And
So
he has many places he can put that, anywhere in the yard.
So it's a good point that construction couldn't start just simply because of that questionable property line. Construction couldn't start until you had a survey. I suppose you could.
Yeah, if you just were to start building it, you don't know whether you're 12 or 15 feet off the property line, or 18. It looks like a survey's gonna have
That's
to be done at some
reasonable.
point in time, just to place the building 15 feet off the property line, should that variance be granted.
Correct.
No, ultimately, I mean, I realize I would need to get the survey. Part of the problem is, I don't know when it happened, they replaced all the telephone poles down there and moved them all like 3.5 to 4 feet to the north when they did replace them all. So everybody has a sad misconception of where
The new
they're
property
at.
line?
In regards to the privacy fence that is on this side of it, on that mortgage survey, that, I bought the house from Mr. Stonerock. On that mortgage survey, that's why there is a seal on it. It's 68 feet 8 inches from the corner of my garage to the property line, which his fence is probably 8 to 12 inches to the south of that line. So it's, I mean, I realize I need to get it, but it's relatively, there was a fence built there that was probably, as it goes back, 2 to 3 to 4 feet jutting out on it, so I will need to get that survey to begin with, to clean that whole issue up on
The
that.
problem is, this is a mortgage survey, it's not a state property
Right.
line survey.
Right.
So that's 68 feet, could be 5 feet
So the
off.
fact that it was done by a surveyor with his stamp and seal on it at that
It's a
time.
mortgage report.
Guys, let's,
It's a mortgage report, it's not a property survey. There's a big difference.
Mr. Gianni, Jim, we understand the point. I think that's good. In the interest of moving along, Brian, you had a question?
Would you consider 3 feet?
Moving an additional 3 feet to the north? I would go 5 feet. And I'm gonna have to get rid of the
Do some
walnut
figuring.
tree to do it.
I'll make a motion, see where it goes.
Please.
If there's no more questions. Case number 23-005, Glenn Giannini. Requesting 2 total variances, a 35-foot lot width variance from section 4.09D, which is a cleanup variance because the lot does not meet the new width requirements, and a 30-foot side yard setback variance from section 5.06A-4, table 5.06-2, both in order to construct a new accessory structure. I motion that we not approve it as posted, but approve it with a 30-foot side yard setback variance citing the narrowness of the lot, the location of the septic, and the topography of the lot. And also that the petitioner screen the side of the building adjacent to the neighbor to the south to protect his view. That's it.
We have a motion, do we have support?
Support.
We have a motion and support, do we have discussion?
It's assumed that the survey would have to be done?
Yes.
Before the
Brian.
footings.
Yeah, I just wanna clarify, what are you terming as screening of the building?
You want
Like
me
One,
exact?
Like-
one tree, three trees,
Yeah,
tall
I
trees?
mean, a lot,
Five to six,
evergreens or?
5 to 6 6-foot pines. And yes, I'll amend the motion to include a survey by a qualified survey engineer to locate the footings of the building in the south property line.
So two amendments, one to include, to define your screening as 5 to 6 6-foot evergreens, and one to require a survey to identify the property line, and therefore the 20-foot from the property line is the building envelope.
Correct.
Who's support?
I'll support the amendment. We really should vote on the amendment first. And then the motion, the whole thing.
We didn't, do we? Is that how we do it?
Do we need to vote on the amendment of the agenda?
Well, no, I mean, you can, now, if you support the amendment,
I
then you
support.
can go through with the whole motion.
We didn't
Okay.
vote, we didn't vote, if we would have voted, I believe, if we would have
Yeah.
voted on it and then amended it, we'd have to
Okay.
kind of redo it, but since it was still a motion. So we'll go back, we had, because some items, is there any discussion on the motion as it was presented and then amended?
I want to make sure the petitioner has no problem
Well-
with what we're talking about.
I got a little lost on what, I'm sorry, I got a little lost on what you guys were saying, but,
Brian, could you
I
summarize
believe
it?
I understand
I think.
that it's gonna be reviewed pending after
Let
the
me,
survey.
let me just summarize. So, Mr. Galley motioned, and it was supported to essentially approve the requests with slight amendment, rather than, the first is request to essentially clean up the books and acknowledge that there's a difference in the lot to width ratio. That motion is part of the, or that item is part of the motion. The second, rather than the requested 35-foot setback, the motion is advocating for a 30-foot setback, so 5 foot further north than was originally applied for.
20-foot setback.
So it's 20 feet. from
20
the property line.
20-foot,
Yeah,
30
20
foot,
feet
30-foot
overall
variance.
from the.
30-foot
yes,
variance, 20 foot from the property line to the edge of the building, with the addition of 5 to 6 6-foot evergreen trees, with the requirement that a survey has to be completed before the building can be constructed to verify that lot and the location of that 20-foot minimum distance, and the acknowledgement in the motion that it's a unique situation in the sense that the lot is more narrow than would be typical in this zoning, that there's some topography and there's some trees that ideally could be preserved, some hickory trees that could be preserved. So that's essentially the motion with support.
I
And we
understand
have
that.
support. So
Okay.
my question was, are you okay with it?
Yes,
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Epping,
Yes.
Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Sharrow,
No.
Mr. Zurich,
Yes.
Mr. Auger.
Yes.
Your motion was passed. Good luck. Please work together to establish the property line. No doubt the Township Building Department, as they issue the permits, will verify that location of the property line. Sounds like it's, you'll work with the Building Department both to verify the survey as well as all needed permits. All right, thank you. Moving on with our agenda, item number 3 was postponed till May 24th, so we'll move on to the fourth case. Case number 23-007, Jocelyn Cray, petitioner requesting a 23.5-foot front yard front yard variance from section 4.06D in order to demolish and reconstruct a new home on the property located at 6789 Deer Hill, which is an R1A single-family residential development. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening. So I'm Chris Macklin, the designer on the project, and this is Andrew, Jocelyn's husband. Jocelyn couldn't make it tonight, so
Nice to meet
Mr. Cray here.
Appreciate you coming, thanks. Do you want to get started and explain
Yep.
what you seek to do at,
Yep, and so Chris Macklin, and I'm at 12080 Jeffers Lane in Fenton.
great, thank you.
So, yeah, basically what we're requesting is it's 22 and a half foot, 23 and a half foot front yard setback. And what we're asking you to do, that is, if you've gone by there, the house is already there. We're tearing it down. At first, we were thinking of an addition remodel, but as things kind of went along, it seemed to make sense to get a little deeper house for the design and that kind of thing for the intention. So we'd like to tear down, essentially put the garage, or at least the limits of the garage, towards the street and front to back of the garage, or side to side, however you want to say
I'm gonna
that.
interrupt you just once, to clarify a whole lot of things. Is the gray area the existing house?
That is correct.
And the, okay.
Yep.
Thank you
Yep.
very much.
And also, too, let me clarify, I just noticed something on the site plan there. You see the little north arrow, it's actually in the wrong direction. It actually needs to rotate back about 90 degrees. So
Okay.
the road is a little more north.
Okay.
So yeah, we want to put up the walls in the same spot as what is currently there as far as the garage, or within that setback area. Reason for that, and actually when I submitted this at the very beginning of April, it's even more of a hardship than what we realized as far as what the septic field is going to allow us. We've been coordinating with Oakland County, and we need to put a new septic field in, and we tried to make one that was somewhat, let's call it kind of off the shelf, or a standard septic field, but it's just not allowable right in that area again. And so that would obviously prevent us from moving the house towards the lake. Topography, all those things would do that too. But we are in process of going to get an engineered septic field designed for us that will actually pull away from the house a little bit more to make that feasible. So we're pinned in pretty good, even more than what we had thought a month ago. So that's what we're trying to
Great.
achieve there.
So, in summary, you're taking down a home, you're building a new home, a bigger home. But interesting, most of the growth of the home is in the back. So
That is correct, past the setback line anyways.
past the setback line.
Yep.
What we're here tonight to do is to look at the request for a front yard variance, or variance from the front yard setback. Setback would normally be 40 foot in this zoning. You're asking for a 23.5 foot variance, 16 and a half foot from the right-of-way line. Interestingly, though, exactly where the existing garage is now. So in some sorts of speaking, it's to bring the existing home into compliance, sort of like the last one. So you're not moving closer to the property line than would normally happen. A question would be, can you move it further back? Can you bring it into compliance and move it back? It looks like there's some topography. You've talked about the septic field, so moving it back perhaps a few feet may or may not be possible, but moving it back 23 and a half feet, probably why the current home was built where it's built.
As well as many of the other homes there
Correct.
on Deer Hill. So.
Correct, okay. All right, I appreciate it. Right.
Yeah, I think pretty much every home on this street would have a larger variance than you, and I believe 2 years ago, we approved a very similar, actually more of a variance as well. I mean, it looks like you're being good new neighbors and good architects. It doesn't look like you're impacting any rear lake view of the neighbors. Nice clean line across the back there. To me, it looks like you pretty much did the best you could do with the situation. That's all I have.
I have no concerns. I just want to hear if there's any concerns from the public.
I should start doing that first, because it is a good point to do that, but thank you. Alan?
Now, I was out there today, the only concern I have is when I shot a picture down the north property line, back of your excavator going down through there, I do see a deck off the north side of that house. Now, are you gonna be putting anything on the north side of the house to be encroaching further than what
As
this
far
house
as
is?
north is, are you saying, in reference to the picture right now, are you saying on the top side, or are you saying?
Yeah, the
Okay.
top side.
No, actually, we're gonna reduce it more. We're gonna actually, it's probably gonna be, end up just being some type of landscaping wall, the deck that's currently there, you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's going away.
that seems to be an encroachment already.
Yeah, we actually wanna open it up slightly, for better drainage patterns and things like that between the homes.
And that wraps around to a deck in the back of the house. that we're
Right.
getting rid of.
Right.
Yeah. No, well, really, the deck that's gonna be there is the one that's on the, let's call it to your north, it's at this point, more on the southwest corner of the new,
Where
house.
the elevated room is right now?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Are you familiar with that? Okay. That was my only concern.
Great, thank you. Jim,
I have no problems with this request.
is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this case tonight? Nobody? Anybody online? Doesn't look like there is, or who's BF?
One person online.
I can't see what the first name is. The initials BF are on.
Brenda.
Brenda? Brenda, I see that you're online. We haven't heard from you tonight. Would you like to speak on this case, or are you just monitoring the meeting? See, if you are speaking, you're on mute. Oh, now you're gone.
Scared.
Scared her off. No one else in the audience would like to speak on this tonight? Okay, gentlemen, we'll bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion, case 23-007, Jocelyn Cray petitioner, requesting a 23.5-foot front yard variance from section 4.06D, table 4.06, in order to demolish and reconstruct a new home on the property located at 6789 Deer Hill Drive. I motion that we approve the request as presented, citing pretty much every home on that side of the street has similar to greater variances, and topography and road proximity and the lake all come into play to make it a hardship lot.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Do we have any discussion? Brian, if we could have a roll call, please?
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharrow?
Yes.
Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
Mr. Auger?
Yes.
Mr. Epping?
Yes. Good luck, gentlemen.
All right, thanks,
Sounds like a
folks.
nice
Appreciate it.
project. We're looking forward to seeing it. Please, again, work with the building department. With that, that ends our new business. Next on our agenda is item H, approval of the minutes. We've got in our packets the minutes of April 5th of this year. Does everybody have a chance to review those? If we have any changes, if not, we'd have a motion to accept those minutes.
Hearing no changes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 5th, 2023 as presented.
Support, roll call, or all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. With the meeting being open, is there any discussion? All good there, Mr. Ottman?
You'll renotice the special meeting to us? That's
Yeah.
the third week, correct?
Yeah. Okay. May
That's still on?
24th. Yep.
Will that be the only case, or do you try and add other
That's it.
things? Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:20.
It's 7:20. Do we have support?
Aye. Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Come to scrutinize us tonight?